Happy Lent or happy almost Lent, depending when you're watching this video. As we began the great springtime of the church year we call Lent, we'd like to turn our eyes to those first readings of this church year, particularly the first reading of Genesis, this piece of the famous story of Noah and the ark. And interestingly enough, we never hear any more than this in the Sunday readings, despite the fact that Noah and the ark is kind of a famous story. You know, it's one we tell kids all the time. You can buy little animals to play with. But there's a lot more depth to the story. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of background, things to think about as we begin the season. And ask the very obvious question, what in the world is the church thinking by giving us this reading to start the season? So let's start with some background on Noah and the ark. Just a reminder, these first 11 chapters in the book of Genesis are best seen as the prehistories or the prequel to the rest of the Bible. They were not the first things written. They will come much later in the story. The earliest pieces of it, scholars believe, would have been written after the reign of King David, probably in the reign of King Solomon. So you're talking after 1000, 950 BC. If Abraham is dating at about, let's say, 1750, Moses at, let's say, 1300, there's a long span of time in there. From the time of the covenant with Abraham, the big covenant at Mount Sinai, and the covenant with King David. All of that already exists when these stories start taking some sense of real form. Okay? But the Genesis stories, those 11 chapters, are best seen as wisdom literature, wisdom of the people, that they have gleaned fundamental truths that they understand about God because of all this experience. They're saying that these fundamental truths, this understanding of God, has been here from the beginning. Hence, we get these as the beginning stories lived out in the people's lives. So again, best seen as a prequel or a prelude, and that contain elements of what will bear out in the historical books, in the history of the people of God. Okay, so you got to keep remembering this. They already have some experience of God when these stories start taking form. I keep saying stories. Just again, some background. There are at least 2 versions of Noah's Ark. If you go back and start reading in chapter 6 through this part of chapter 9 of Genesis, what you'll notice is, oops, there's some duplication of things. Like, I thought they already said this, but now they're saying that. That's indicating to us there is at least 2 versions that the redactor, the editor, is trying to mesh together, right? Easiest place to find that? How many animals go on the ark? You know, your little Tupperware or kids set would tell you that they went on 2 by 2. That's not the only counting in the story. Where these 2 versions come from? Well, if you remember your biblical history, after the reign of King Solomon, the United Kingdom of Israel would divide in half, north to south. And what happens is, pretty typical, the writers color the common story with the flavor of their people. The people of the northern kingdom of Israel or the southern kingdom of Judah. So certain cities or certain personages would be more important to one group and less important to the other, and vice versa, right? And so slight differentiation happens. But when the stories get put together, common in these early books of the scriptures, instead of picking one, they just kind of merge them, but they don't always merge exactly. Perhaps we would like to pick and choose, but they put it all in there. So this is a fun background to the Noah story. It's not as clean if you tried to read it literally, but is very clear. when we try to look for the themes, the point, the reason, the truth of the sacred scriptures. At the point we get it in the lectionary, we've already had the flood. So Noah and his family are called by God. They build the boat. They get the animals, some of every kind that exists on the planet, no matter how you count, onto this boat. And the storm happens. Why? Because the world has not been doing a great job of following God. The world has become evil, but Noah and his family will be saved. And the flood comes, and the waters rise. And for 40 days and 40 nights, it rains. A whole generation. And then the sun comes out, the water recedes, the boat lands, and what does Noah do? He offers a sacrifice to God. The God who led him through the water, who led him through the storm, offers praise and thanks to God. And it's after that we get Sunday's reading, where God says, to Noah and his sons, I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you. This is unique. The covenant God is making is with the planet. Everything. And what is that? Never again shall all the bodily creatures be destroyed by the waters of a flood. There shall not be another flood to devastate the earth. Never again will I destroy what I have created. Never again will the waters take over you. Keep holding that in there. Another piece of fun information. You may know from some courses or something you read somewhere that a flood story was common among ancient peoples. In fact, the Gilgamesh epic predates this by centuries and centuries. And other peoples of the Middle East, of that time period and space, other peoples have these flood stories in their religious repertoire. But the next line in Genesis marks a very broad difference between the people of Israel and their flood story and their relationship with God and other people's relationship with God. And this is huge. God said, this is the sign that I am giving you for all ages to come of the covenant between me and you and every living creature. I will set my bow in the clouds to serve as a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And when I bring clouds over the earth and the bow appears in the sky, I will recall the covenant I have made. And the waters shall never again destroy. The bow in the sky. What is the bow in the sky? Well, pretty common in wisdom literature. It's got multiple meanings, and you don't pick one. You kind of have to layer them on each other. The most obvious sign is the rainbow, right? After a big, heavy storm, what do we see? This beautiful, multicolored, diverse rainbow, which has been used in many places and many times to show a sign of covenant, of freedom. Hold on to that. Of love between God and God's people, a sign of this particular covenant. So yeah, it means the rainbow. It's a sign of our relationship with God. Absolutely. But it's got a couple other meanings too. It's not just a rainbow. The same word is used throughout the scriptures to mean a bow, as in a bow and arrow, a warrior's bow. In essence, the sign of power and strength. And what does our God do? Hangs the bow in the sky. Hangs up the weapon. Done. Over. No longer will I need this. Interesting analogy, is it not? That we are reminded that the battle doesn't exist between us and God. Nope. The third piece, the bow hanging in the sky, is a sign of a relationship of peace with God. Some religions at the time had this antagonistic thing with their gods. Not our God. Our God has chosen to have a relationship with us not built on fear, but a relationship built on peace. That was God's choice to us. We didn't earn it. Noah acknowledges that in the sacrifice. But God is bigger than any of us. We don't get to earn anything. Nope. God chooses. God chooses peace with us. And so the bow hangs in the sky. Some scholars talk about when you hang the arrow in the sky, right? If you even were going to try and shoot it, it would shoot away from humanity, away from the earth. That's why it's a sign of peace. And not only that, if you think back to the original creation story, one of the two anyway, God put a dome in the sky, right? Think about the bow in the sky and the dome of the sky. And if you read the full story of Noah, you see the same command is given to Noah's children to go and repopulate the earth and to take care of it, the same thing that was given to the first creation. So a new creation is to happen in this relationship with God. That's the story of Noah and the ark. It's not just cute animals being saved. It's about this relationship. The people understood that from the beginning, God was to be a God of peace and relationship with humanity. And in this case, even if we mess up, God will still be God and the bow will still hang in the sky. We need not fear. That with the imagery we even get into the New Testament, that the sea and water are deadly, right? We have the story of the Red Sea in the Old Testament, but we have the stories of Jesus in the boat on the Sea of Galilee. And Jesus walking on water, calming the waves and calming the storm. Same kind of images as you have here in the story of Noah, where no matter how bad the water gets, God will not destroy you by it. Interesting thoughts to take to reflection. What does it have to do with Lent? The second reading from Peter says, in the midst of it, he writes, God patiently waited in the days of Noah during the building of the ark, in which a few persons, 8 in all, were saved through the water. This prefigured baptism, which saves you now. So now we got another layer to add to the story. Baptism. What would baptism mean in the late New Testament period when the story was written? Well, St. Paul would have written in Romans, just a few decades before Peter was written, are you not aware that we who were baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death, that in likeness to his death you attain a like resurrection? When you were baptized, you went under the water and you breathed up new life when you came up and out. You gave up your old self. You died with Christ. You came up through those waters. And it's no coincidence that at the Great Easter Vigil, when we will baptize folks at the Triduum, that the reading we must read is getting through that Red Sea where the water will kill off Pharaoh's chariots and charioteers, but the people of Israel will be saved by going through the waters. See all this lovely layering that is happening? So what does it say about Lent? My sisters and brothers, we enter Lent, the springtime of the church year, remembering our baptism. It's what the Council Fathers said we should do, that Lent has 2 themes. Repentance, yes, but first of all, baptism. The preparation of those in our process who will be baptized at the Easter Vigil, but our baptism. What does it mean to us? And what does it mean to us as a baptized person when the world gets difficult and hard? when we know suffering's going to occur, when living the gospel values of peace and justice causes heartache, when the world can be swirling around, what does Noah tell us? The bow has been hung in the sky. We will not be destroyed. God is with us on this journey, even if it gets very hard. That's the story of Noah. It's the story of Lent. But be careful. Like the story of Noah, we don't get to earn anything in this Lent. No, we offer praise and thanks to God. We offer God the sacrifice of our lives. We give it up for God. Not to prove anything. What does God need from us? The only thing God has asked is love. And to follow Jesus. May this Lent be a time of following, of letting go and trusting God in the waters of our lives. We're safe. This is not a God who wants us hurt. This is a God of protection, a God of peace, a God who will guide our boat through the storm and get us to the other side. So in Lent, let us face whatever it is that challenges our baptism. Let's take the time to renew it, to clear it off, to trust that even if the journey seems hard, God is right there. God is right there. The bow in the sky promises it. Wonderful, wonderful Lent.